we need to talk a little bit about the recent honey competition which took place in the Free State that was judged by Enid Brown. The Free State hosted their first ever big honey competition. They don't have very many members, so
the real deal, as natural as it gets in that area.
Yes.
But that would get downgraded. Right, brag it with Christy.
Brag it with Christy.
Fantastic, cheers.
Here
we go. Did you give me the old beer now again?
Lose you lose, buddy.
Right, so this is our like we said in the previous video, this is our Bushveld Bees Braggot made with Clockwork Breweries.
Yes.
Definitely.
And it's a winner, it really is. It's a lovely tasting beer with a sweet aftertaste.
Awesome.
Perfect.
Very nice. Okay. Right, today's topic, we wanted to talk about the competition in the Free State.
Yes. So in April, I took a trip to the beautiful place called Stonehaven in the Free State, where the Free State hosted their first ever big honey competition, which was very exciting. The Free State Beekeepers Association has only been going for about a year or two, something
very
like
that.
New, very new, they don't have very many members, so to pull together a honey competition is a lot of work. And it takes a lot of really invested people to do something like that when there's only one or two of you to do the work. So I don't know everybody who was involved, but a big cheers to Elizabeth, who was the main organizer, and then I worked quite closely with Neil and his two lovely boys who helped out with setting up.
But there were a lot of people that
I'm sure there were loads of people involved, but
other members from Free State Beekeepers.
Exactly. What was amazing about this competition is they invited Enid Brown from Scotland to come out and judge the competition, and because she's one of the top UK judges, she was able to come out and award a blue ribbon. So the blue ribbon is a top award given to entries that stand out in a really big, outstanding way for the UK competition.
Can that only happen if the UK judge is there?
Yes, and as far as I understand, not every UK judge has the ability to award it. So it really is a big deal. The South African Honey Judges Guild was also involved in some of the judging, and we judged certain areas of the competition. It was a lovely opportunity for us all to learn. Obviously, because it's a UK competition, it's done different.
A different way of doing it. Different standard.
Different standard, different way, different method. And so after the competition was done, I got a lot of phone calls of people who didn't really understand what happened. Why didn't I get top prizes? All these kinds of things. And so that's why we thought we'll have this little chat and just discuss the differences, because I think it's very nice to say, it's an international competition. But then you also need to understand what's the differences between that and the way things are judged in South Africa currently. And I think both have merit and both have their places, definitely. And what we must remember as well is that international competitions are often entered by huge masses of people. So the way that
sorry to interrupt there. Was it considered an international competition because there's an international judge judging it?
No. The short answer to that is no. It was considered
a Free State, provincial. Is it classified as a national?
I'd say it was a South African competition because there were entries from all over South Africa. There were entries that came in obviously from the Free State, but there were entries from the Cape, from up in Johannesburg, from Northwest, from KZN. So, our country was well represented and there were loads of entries. But to give you an idea, in in that particular competition, I don't think there were more than maybe 40 classes. Whereas the UK honey competition, it's got 400 classes.
Wow.
So you've got to understand the scale is that much bigger. And because of that massive scale, they've developed ways to quickly reduce the judging time. So basically what happens is it starts the same as in South Africa on presentation. When South African judging is done, each section is given a score. So the items are judged against one another, and the one with the best presentation gets top score.
Out of those.
And it gets reduced from, yours is a little bit better than that, and so on until the worst. So you start off, let's say everyone starts with 20 points for presentation, and it's deducted according to how many mistakes the beekeepers made in presentation.
And presentation would include what type of thing?
So it depends on the class. So if it's, let's use, for example, a wax block. if it hasn't been shined up with a cloth and beautiful and shiny.
Okay.
It's got fingerprints on it. It's got dents, or it's got bubbles.
Okay.
Or maybe there's a few speckles at the bottom of dust or whatever. Yeah. Okay. So that kind of thing will deduct from it. If you're looking at things like honey, you'll see maybe if it's in a liquid section and it's started to granulate. So there's tiny little granules. They use lights behind the honey to be able to see that.
Yeah.
Also, again, things like fingerprints, smudges,
particles,
dust, a bee inside, a stick, a whatever, a leg, all those kinds of things will deduct points.
Yeah.
Now, in comparison, with the UK judging style, in order to get through entries more quickly, if you make mistakes in the presentation, you don't go forward into the next stage of judging.
So you get eliminated straight off.
Yes.
So literally, that honey is just kicked out.
Exactly.
Wow.
So that's why people who are used to achieving really top marks were, something like granulation. It's not something you can control.
Yeah.
I mean, the night before judging, that's the reason why your entries arrive a day or two before the judging, is so that all the entries are exposed to the same room temperature for the same amount of time.
Okay.
So that they're all on level playing field.
Okay.
But I mean, to give you an idea, that night before judging, it went down to like 2 degrees.
Yeah.
It poured with rain.
Yeah. So everyone
just up the hill in Lesotho, it snowed.
Yeah.
So the chance of granulation is pretty damn good.
Yeah.
So it gets eliminated. One little bit of granulation in an open class liquid, it's no longer liquid.
Yeah.
So it's great. It's really, really great to have us being judged at such a high standard.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, because of the elimination, and they don't call it elimination, they say it's basically you're downgraded. Okay. So that's the wording that they use. You're downgraded.
Okay.
So you don't your honey doesn't go on to the next phase, which would then be aroma. And then from aroma, if it doesn't fit, it gets downgraded. So it doesn't get judged further. And then they'll test the taste and the how I can't think of the word now. How thick your honey is, the viscosity of it.
Okay, so basically, if you understood the international criteria or the process, so it's visual first, then it's aroma and stuff, and you could make sure that your honey is looked after in that order, you'd make it quite far into the competition and possibly kick out a lot of people while you're going into the process.
I think one of the things is so presentation. A lot of that is beekeeper skill. Okay. How well versed is the beekeeper in what is being expected in a competition, and that's difficult.
Yeah.
Because unless you've been a part of a competition and seen how it's judged and understood each thing, it's difficult. But that's why I think our current way of judging in South Africa is helping teach us those skills. Because every time that you've done your competition, on the back of your card with your scores, it gives you comments. Bug leg found in your hand. No, I won't say bug leg. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? So it gives you guidance on how to improve your entry.
For next
and the
time.
idea in the UK is that you enter lots of little competitions in little counties where there's maybe 20 or 30 entries. And then when you've done really, really well there, then you go to the national.
Okay.
And that's where, if you're not the best, you're not going through to the next round.
Very quickly. Yeah.
Okay. So beekeeper effort and beekeeper ability is such a huge part of moving into the next criteria.
So I think one of the important things to do is when you are entering into a competition, you've got to be very sure of whether it's a locally judged according to what standard.
Yes.
Is it being judged?
And the thing is,
local,
if you want bragging rights for that blue ribbon, hell's bells, you better be on the top of your game and it better be the best.
Yeah. And you also go and do the research and say, okay, the first criteria is the visual, then your aroma, and make sure that you lose literally 0 points on visual.
Yes.
And
you
that's
lose
so
0
difficult. On aroma. It must be brilliant. You go to next, eventually that you get to the end and that way. Whereas in South Africa, you could still be get like 96% highest mark in that category,
and maybe
your visual was horrible.
Or maybe you only made 2 small errors and you lost 2 points. But because it's getting so this is the merit in the way that we do it in South Africa. Is that even though you didn't get the beekeeper stuff right, you're still getting feedback on the aroma, the taste, the viscosity of your honey. And especially in mead, the mead was judged exceptionally harshly. And mead in South Africa it's still a growing skill.
New.
It's still fairly new, although it's been around for centuries. The market or the group of people making mead and entering it into competition is very small, and so many of them are still learners. They're still learning, and so even
mead, us, we learning all the time. I mean,
we are.
Got the only meadery in KZN, and
no one to help us.
Yeah, exactly. You're still learning. I mean, we have to go to the Numzans in the Cape and stuff like that to get the feedback.
But one of the things that happened, and we must remember, although I say that it was judged harshly, it's judged to a harsh and high standard.
Yeah.
So a lot of the meads were not fully clarified.
Okay.
And because I expect, because of the really cold temperature the night before, a lot of them had literally all the sediment drop suddenly overnight.
The mead.
In the mead.
Okay.
And so anything that had a bit of sediment or wasn't fully clarified didn't go through.
Yeah.
So they were they only smelt and tasted a handful of meads, and those ones got top prizes.
So here's a question. When the honey and mead was judged first, the second time that it was judged, what was the difference in time frame? Was it a day later?
Yes.
That can be a big difference.
It can be. Look, a lot of people could talk to settlement. They could talk about, like, okay, maybe there was very little sediment, and when we took the bottle to tap some out, maybe it mixed it all up. Yeah, maybe. Like that, but at the end of the day, we also have to remember that it's a blue ribbon competition.
Yeah.
Any mead that had any bit of sediment was never going to make it into top scores in any case because the standard is so high.
Yeah.
And the reason the blue ribbon has the status that it has is because of those high expectations.
If it was easy, no one would be able to get it.
Exactly.
Everyone would get it, but no one would miss it.
So at the moment, just some internal stuff that's happening in the Honey Judges Guild is that there is discussion of possibly incorporating some of those very high standards on presentation and downgrading of entries.
That's good.
But not in the small regional,
aggressive manner,
not in the regional competitions, because otherwise, how will people learn?
100%.
But possibly when we do the championship competition at the end of the year, anyone who's won and qualified to enter that should know the standards,
because that will raise the bar.
It would raise the bar hugely.
Yeah.
So one thing that has really been amazing and has come out of this is, I want to say to those of you who entered and perhaps you feel despondent because you didn't get the top prize, you must remember that it's as if it was an international competition. We were lucky enough to have an international judge come here and bring it to us. And so it was judged at the absolute highest standard. And do you really want first place in a top competition if you didn't deserve it?
Yeah.
No, you don't.
Yeah. No, I agree.
So there are some things that are done differently in the UK to here. A silly example that they have access to a whole range of different wicks for candles, special ones made specifically for beeswax candles because they burn a certain way.
The string that you buy at the CNA, man.
No, so they've got like a little bit of an air pocket. This is how it was described to me, down the center so that it burns evenly, all this kind of stuff. So if in the UK you enter the competition and you don't have the correct wick and it's not the correct thickness, you downgrade it. In South Africa, unfortunately, those things are not available.
A toki is a toki.
Yeah, it's a toki that you put in the wax and that's it.
Yeah.
So some of the stuff doesn't translate well to the South African environment, let's call it that.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, also things like the wax. In South Africa, we have such diversity of vegetation that any beekeeper who's had bees in 3 or more different regions understands how different the wax color can be.
Insane.
Dependent on the forage. And yet in the UK, I don't know if it's the same, but the wax that wasn't perfectly a bright yellow was downgraded immediately, simply because it didn't have the right color.
So we've got some wax, and it's like real wild stuff, especially like removals that have come out of a tree or something like that. So that's like the real wild thing.
Yeah.
And it comes out almost like an olive green.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's like the real deal, as natural as it gets in that area.
Yes.
But that would get downgraded.
We have to understand, if you're going to enter a competition in France, they're going to judge it to their standards and to what's the norm in their area.
Okay.
And if you enter a competition in Germany, it'll be the same thing. And in wherever, Scandinavia, you name it.
Yeah.
So we also need to understand that whilst our Honey Judges Guild is fairly young in terms of
relatively
speaking, in a, if you compare it to associations overseas and stuff that have been running for hundreds of years, but our Honey Judges Guild have exposure to what is local
Yeah.
on a lot of occasions. And
Yeah.
I've often seen, I mean, when you were there when we were in the Cape, and we came across honeys that some of the judges said, I've never ever tasted this.
So different to what I've ever seen. Tell you that.
But we're not scared to call on a local and say, come and explain this to me.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. So I think we must understand it's still a place of learning and development. And I encourage people to join and come and be a part of a competition. I mean, if it's been happening in your area, come and donate your time for a couple of days, meet everyone, see how things are done.
I think
because really that's a great way to learn. And once you've learned, maybe you don't agree with it, but maybe you do. And maybe you find this passion for mead or honey or wax or something that you never had before.
So I'm very much a South African. So I shy away from I shy away from the international competition type stuff. I like South Africans to be judged on South African standards because local is lacquer and we've made things the way that we make it because it works for us.
Yes.
You know, type thing. So, you know, you will get those changes, and I think it's up to the individual beekeeper. Do they want to enter that competition? It's a international one, or that's a local one, or that's a provincial one.
But then understand what the consequences are of that.
Entering it, 100%. Okay, so here's another question.
Dun, dun, dun.
And hopefully I'm not like touching on something which is
I need to get something just in case.
Yeah, you stop me. Okay. All right. The waxed. Right. The difference between taking wax from the side or taking from the middle underneath, is there a difference between that?
So, I don't know.
Where they go and sample it, you know, the wax judge will go along and sample.
So,
I mean, is there a difference?
Most people, once the wax comes back, what are you going to do with it? What are you going to do with the wax?
Oh, melt it into
wax
sheets.
Melt it down. Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's not as if someone took it and took a bite out of it because you've got their teeth marks in it. It's taken with a knife.
Cut out.
I don't know. I think again it comes down to a standard. You know, that's yeah. You're talking about a wax block.
You can take a slice.
Yeah, you can take it out of anywhere.
UK, you've got to take it from a very specific
indiscreet place underneath the wax block. Why? I think it's probably got to do with they get a lot of public coming in to view the displays after the competition with all the awards.
Okay.
So I think it probably stems from that.
It still looks more presentable.
Exactly.
But not so that you can resell the wax after, surely.
Well, I don't know. I honestly don't know.
Okay.
One of the things that was a bit of a hot topic, let's call it hot topic, was when we're judging comb wax, you know, with honey in it. Often as South Africans, when we do the judging, you take a scoop out the middle of it. And it's very intentionally done out the middle so that sample cannot be resold.
Okay.
Because if someone's dug a spoon in something and eaten it, regardless of where they dug it, it's not really ethical to resell that comb. What, you're going to turn it over? So it's done intentionally to ruin it, so that it cannot be resold.
Okay.
Whereas in the UK, they're saying, you know, they say that's someone's commercial ability to make money, and you shouldn't be ruining it intentionally.
Okay. Cool.
Again, it's different strokes for different folks.
Yeah.
But again, if you're judging that one competition as an international judge, then you have to stick to the standard they require.
Yeah.
And if you're judging South African, it would be different. So again, I'm not saying one is right and one is wrong. I would have a personal preference. I would not like to know that.
I don't want to buy wax that's been bitten into by someone. You know, with all this all over
taken out of it.
Yeah.
But it's done discreetly, Brian.
Yeah, I don't know. You know, rather melt it down and give me a nice like gold bar type thing, and that'll be fine. But I don't need someone's teeth marks in my.
I think most people who enter competitions understand that those entries are not going to be reused. Yeah. I mean, unless the mead bottle is still sealed with a shrink wrap, it shouldn't be reutilized for resale.
No.
You know, it just doesn't seem right. But anyway, I hope that we've managed to put a bit of clarity on it. Again, I think it was an amazing experience for me personally, and I would really love to go over to the UK and judge there. Obviously, it's a very expensive thing to do, but I think that we can only learn from being exposed to other beekeepers and other judging experiences, just to make us better. And at the end of the day, just because it's got an international whatever, some of it doesn't translate well to South Africa. That's just the long and short of it.
So everything in a nutshell. How did the Free State competition go?
It went wonderfully. And what a special place. Stonehaven have steam trains.
I know. You sent videos on that. Okay. So that international judge, what's her name?
Enid Brown.
Okay. We're going to be posting some videos on Enid.
Yes.
On at the competition. And,
she did a workshop.
Yeah.
Explaining how the judging of various things is done. which helps to give us a bit of clarity. And I hope that we can all learn from that.
Awesome.
And once again, I just want to make sure that everyone understands we're not discrediting one way or the other.
100%.
All we're saying is they all have their merits and they are all different. But at the end of the day, I think both ways push us to do better and produce better products.
Yeah.
And that's what it should be about.
Fantastic. Love it. Thank you very much, guys.
Hey, come on.
Cheers. See you soon.
See you soon. Bye. Always got to be one.
That a mosquito will be.
It's a bee.
It's a bee.
That's a bee.
Yeah.
Can you take
Looking for their queen.
Don't piss it off so it stings
So,
me.